Put your mics on, please. Then we'll call our meeting to order. Let the minutes reflect all members are present. And the next thing to do is set the agenda. Anybody like to change or add to the agenda today?
President Preiner, staff would like a new item 4 under items requiring action. This would be the Preby Lake Outlet Project.
Okay,
And then likewise a new number 5 immediately follow it, which would be the Jensen letter that I just handed out to you.
all right.
And then just advance the numbering from there.
So check register will become number 6. Okay. Anybody else like to add to the agenda today? If not, I'll call for motion.
Madam President, I move to approve the agenda with the 2 additions proposed by staff.
Second?
We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Approval of the minutes?
Madam Chair, I move approval of the October 27th, 2021 regular meeting of the Rice Creek Watershed Board of Managers.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
President Preiner, I will note that in my scan of the letter that I handed out, it does raise concern with some of the statements in the meeting minutes of the 27th. But if you're comfortable with the content, so be it. If you'd like to review that, maybe you can table it to the next meeting or what have you.
Well, the comments were the comments. So if there's a change in that, we'll have to go ahead and then change what we have to insert into there. But for now, we're going to approve the comments as they stand. Okay?
Enough.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
So that I understand here, you intend if there's some objection or correction or such in this
That'll
letter,
become today's.
We'll work on that at the next meeting to make those corrections.
Yes, or we can work on it today to correct whichever direction we all decide to go at the time. But for now, we're only approving the minutes as they stand. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Consent agenda.
President Preiner, Board of Managers, staff have 5 applications for your consideration today. I do have one small change for application 21-81. It's on page 30 of the packet. And when you get to that page, it's the 4th line from the bottom there.
Okay.
And where it says, which is outside the RCWD, we would add is within the Coon Creek Watershed District. Minor change.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope, that is it.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we have it on the table, number 20-054, 21-81, 21-87, 21-93, and 21-097 with corrections. Anybody like to make a motion for the consent agenda?
Madam President, I move that we grant conditional approval pending receipt of changes to projects 20-054, 21-081, 21-087, 21-093, and 21-097 as contained in engineers' findings and recommendations and is contained in the engineers' report dated November 2nd, 2021, with a modest minor word adjustment made to permit 21-081 as described by staff.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, very good. Now we're going to the applicant for permit number 21-094, and we start with a variance request. Patrick?
Preiner, Board of Managers, starting on page 54 of the application is the engineer's report for application 2194. The technical memo from Houston is on page 58. This is a variance request from the WMC requirements. We'll have Chris Otterness with Houston Engineering kind of run through the project background here, and then we will run through the evaluation of the criteria.
Okay. Chris?
Jeff Joyer, as the project applicant for the Waldock Farm expansion, has submitted a written request for the variance from the Rice Creek Watershed District. This would be regarding Rule C10DF.6. This rule requires buffers to be established adjacent to wetlands within the Comprehensive Wetland Protection and Management Plan, or CWPMP areas, which are described under Rule F6E. District engineer evaluated the variance request per Rule L for permit 21-094 for the request of variance and statement of hardship, which is Exhibit A, dated October 7th, 2021, and was amended and last received and signed on October 29th, 2021. We evaluated the variance by applying the undue hardship and practical difficulties tests set forth under the municipal variance statute incorporated under prior adopted policy of district variance standard. And we list in our memo here the different items that we go through, which Patrick will be going through individually here.
All right. We can start here with Criterion A, how substantial the variation is in relation to district rule requirements.
Oh, and actually, I apologize, I forgot to go through the project summary here. Maybe
Sure.
I'll do that here real quick before you start in. So the project proposes to construct 2 new commercial buildings, a shop and growing facilities. The construction will occur in 2 separate areas on 2 parcels, a total of 109 acres within the Lino Lake CWPMP. Only one of the parcels has a preliminary wetland management corridor, or WMC, on it. The Waldock Farms as a whole encompasses approximately 180 acres plus or minus. The land is primarily agriculture, and the proposed project is to support that agricultural use. 2 site areas primarily drain to the surrounding wetland, low-lying areas, and drainage patterns will be maintained. The wetlands drain through a private ditch and then to George Watch Lake, which is a resource of concern. The runoff from the site drains to a wetland north of the site and then to a Nook County Ditch 5362 Branch 5 Lateral 2 before ultimately reaching Golden Lake, which is a resource of concern. Oops, I must have a line in here we probably need to strike out here, that last sentence regarding the 5362 lateral 2. Project proposes meeting the stormwater requirements of Rule C via 2 infiltration basins to provide water quality treatment and rate control for runoff from the proposed project. The project will not impact any wetlands or the preliminary wetland management corridor. Okay. And
Sure.
Yep.
Yep, so Criterion A, how substantial the variation is in relation to district rule requirements.
In this case, the applicant is proposing not to install any buffer since the buffer wetland management corridor requirements are non-invasive vegetative land. That is, that this land is not cultivated, crop, pastured, mowed, which should preclude farming activities. The total wetland management corridor, the buffer and wetland area required is approximately 17 acres. The applicant will meet the remaining provisions of the district rules. The existing use of the land is primarily for agriculture, as I noted earlier, and the project will not change the primary use of the land. In light of the present and existing use, the applicant's plan is consistent with the intent of the district rules. It's important to note that any future hard surface addition to the property would constitute a connected action under Rule C2B, which would then trigger the buffer declaration and easement requirements under Rule C10D F.6.
Criterion B, the effect the variance would have on government services.
Issuance of a variance for this to work will not increase flooding or have any negative effect on government services.
Criterion C, whether the variance will affect a substantial change in the character of the watershed resources or will be a substantial detriment to neighboring properties.
As always, we review this under a few different criteria, one of which is water quality. Second is the presence of potential impact to impaired water bodies. And the third is regarding flooding, which I've already addressed. And we list in our memo a number of different criteria that we use to evaluate this. George Watch Lake, which receives the project drainage, is listed on the Section 303D impaired water list. The listed impairments are for nutrients. The project as a whole is not expected to cause adverse impacts. The site has been designed to route the stormwater to the two proposed infiltration basins with stabilized outlets, and the closest basin is located 200 feet away from the wetland management corridor. The presence of threatened endangered species within or near the project area has not been determined. However, the project is not proposing to impact any wetland. There are no scientific or natural areas within or near the project area. And then we look at whether the variance has a potential for a negative effect on the neighboring properties. And under this part of Criterion C, we consider whether the variance can contribute to change in 100-year flood elevation, increase the frequency or magnitude of flood damages, or increase hardship downstream from peak flow or duration. The proposed variances for the buffer requirement, which have a minimal effect on flood elevation. The applicant has complied with Rule C stormwater requirements for peak rate and water quality. The current use of the wetland management corridor area are approximately 6.9 acres of pasture, 3.9 acres of cover hay, with only about 0.6 acres of farmed areas. When we say farmed areas, meaning cultivated areas. The majority of the remainder of the 17 acres is wetland. The proposed variance will have a minimal effect on the adjacent wetland resources. Construction is at least 200 feet away and will reduce flow rates to the wetlands while increasing infiltration. There are no existing buffers around the wetlands. The variance would represent a loss of the current opportunity for the benefits of a buffer, but would not prevent the district from requiring a buffer in the future when the land use changes. Additionally, perennial vegetation is established on 10.8 acres of the 11.4 farmed acres within the wetland management corridor.
Criterion D, whether the practical difficulty can be alleviated by a feasible method other than a variance.
In this case, there is no way to construct the proposed project without triggering the buffer requirement, which is linked to the addition of more than 10,000 square feet of impervious area. The buffer requirements would eliminate the ability to continue farming practices within approximately 11.4 acres of the wetland management corridor area. The applicant estimated the loss of farmable area at approximately $6,600 annually. The applicant has presented that the total project area is small when compared to the entire parcel.
Criterion E, how the practical difficulty occurred, including whether the landowner created the need for the variance.
Per the guidance of District Council, this criterion considers whether the landowner or the landowner's predecessor engaged in an act independent of the proposed development that changed the physical or legal circumstances of the property so as to cause or contribute to the practical difficulty, that changed the physical or legal circumstances of the property so as to cause or contribute to the practical difficulty that the landowner now faces. The district engineer finds that the current landowner or its predecessor did not engage in such action. The practical difficulty is created by the project proposed by the applicant, which is located on the property and location of the preliminary wetland management corridor on the property.
And lastly, criterion F, whether in light of all of the above factors, allowing the variance will serve the interests of justice.
As always, this criterion lies largely in the board's domain as it involves judgment of a non-technical nature. Our criterion for assessing this portion of the practical difficulties is the ability or inability of other applicants with similar site conditions to comply with the district buffer requirements of Rule F5B1. Other applicants have had the ability to feasibly meet these requirements on site. However, such applications have involved different circumstances, namely they have not limited disturbance within a large parcel subject to active and continuing agricultural operations within their required buffer area.
And with that, I would also mention that Mr. Joyer is present. If you'd like to ask questions of him or if he'd like to speak.
Mr. Joyer, would you like to speak to this, or any questions?
Just been pleased with the attention the staff has given us to understand our unique situation. Doing extra obviously, effort to sort it all out.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Patrick, for doing that. Okay, well, then we're down to the variance request motion. Any other questions for Patrick? Otherwise, we'll entertain a motion.
Madam President, I move that we approve the variance request for variance application 21-094 as outlined in accordance with the Rice Creek Watershed District Engineers Variance Technical Memorandum dated November 2nd, 2021.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions? Any further discussion?
Just one clarification with Chris, you said that earlier that part of the sentence should be removed? Was
Yes,
that,
I think that would, might be
Is that under the
good to note
project
for the
summary
record
area?
that, under the project summary,
Yeah.
the first paragraph, we have a sentence, the last sentence of the first paragraph should be,
Is that in the variance request or is that in the?
No,
no,
it's-
this is in our
Summary.
technical memorandum.
Okay.
Technical memorandum.
What page are you on?
This would be 59 of the packet.
So,
Thank you.
so the sentence should just say runoff from the site drains to the wetland north of the site, period?
No, we should just strike that sentence
That whole
altogether.
sentence
That's
altogether.
a sentence, looks like it's a sentence remnant from another.
Sure. No problem, I just wanted to have
report.
that fun. That's the only question I wanted to make.
Computers.
Okay.
So let me modify
Okay.
my motion to approve the variance request for variance applications as outlined in accordance with district engineers technical memorandum dated November 2nd, 2021, as amended at our meeting today to strike the last sentence in the first paragraph on page 59.
And I will resecond it with changes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second with changes. Any further discussion? All in favor?
All right?
Aye.
Good catch.
Okay. Permit application? I need a motion.
Madam President, I move to approve, no, not true, I move to Caprock permit 21-094 as outlined in the Rice Creek Watershed District's engineers' findings and recommendations dated November 2nd, 2021.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the permit application? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Dryer, you're...
Madam Chair, I do have a procedural question.
Oh,
once
go
again.
ahead, go ahead.
So, Mr. Joyner now has a permit from the Watershed District. I understand you probably needed a building permit from the city of Lino Lakes also?
They, because it's agricultural buildings, I do not need a building permit,
Okay,
but they, through their land use permitting, required me to go through this one.
oh, through this process,
Yeah, as a condition of their,
okay? And it's,
they, any construction project, they determine if it's agricultural through their zoning permitting process. As part of that, they require everything here.
they send you our way. So this is the only permit that you need to proceed. Good,
Very good.
all right, thank you.
Okay, the next thing on the agenda is the open mic, and I believe we have Mr. Schilling that would like to speak. Would you like to come up here and speak to us? You had something you wanted to talk about. Roger Schilling? Yeah, would you want to come up and speak at the microphone, please? And when you come up, say your name and address for the mic, or for us then.
You're okay.
That should be good.
I am Roger Schilling, and I have lived in New Brighton, and I have lived next to the railroad that crosses Rice Creek. It also have Ramsey County Bridge, and I've seen a lot of things relative to Rice Creek in the last 40 years. And I've seen dredging projects that have started and completed with success. And we are now at a point where the Rice Creek, as it leaves the area of the railroad and Ramsey County Bridge and goes into Long Lake, has to be dredged out. And I've seen a number of dredging projects that have occurred in the 40 years that I've been there. It really has changed as relative to changes as to how we want the flow of Rice Creek as it comes from the north. It used to be kind of a little snaky route, and early on, they created a sediment, I'll call it a pond, that is north of the bridge. And the whole idea was to keep the sediment in the sediment pond rather than it running into Long Lake, the north end up there. And they, over the years, have at times had to dredge out the north end of Long Lake because the sediment was so great, and the sediment pond was designed to capture some of that sediment before it reaches Long Lake. Now, this was kind of an agreement between the city of New Brighton and the Watershed District in terms of keeping the sediment out of the lake, the north end of the lake. And they have, a couple of times, had to dredge the north end of the lake. And it's not the whole lake I'm talking about here. I'm talking about maybe 200 feet going into Long Lake. And that was about as much as they determined was necessary. And of course, the creek obviously was getting filled up. We are not, excuse me, we are now at the point of having to do something. I have understood that the sediment pond or silt basin has to be on a periodic basis dredged out. And this can vary over maybe 5 years, which they thought was necessary to do the dredging. And I think we might have overshot the 5 years. I think it should have been done now closer to 4 years, because this is the worst I've ever seen it. There isn't much water in this silt basin. It's all silt, and you can go out there and you think you're walking in a swamp. So I can understand there's a need there to empty out the sediment basin, but we got to go one step farther, because the creek on the south side of the railroad bridge is filled up. How do I know that? Somebody came by yesterday as they were attempting to remove a dead deer that was in the creek by my place. And they were kind of concerned that they'd like to take this dead deer and get it out of there. For the reason was that they wanted the head of this deer, a buck, over 12 points, which means it was a huge deer. And it was just laying in front of my house for almost a week. And how these guys were notified of this was they got somebody from the canoe traffic that came up there, and they knew these two guys were interested in obtaining the deer. Now, this deer just laid in the creek. From my place, which is only a few hundred yards away, the deer, the buck, was so large, the antlers were stuck in the mud. And they told me as they were out there trying to remove it, it was, 12 by 12 inches deep over there. So you get an idea here that just from my house, the creek was more than full. I mean, after all, it's just barely usable from a kayak or canoe traffic, you know. But that section from the railroad bridge to the lake is well used by the canoers and the kayakers. My point is, it's filled up. And the whole point is, we're trying to say here, the sediment has reached the north end of the lake. So when we think about dredging, the north end of the lake, which is over full, and I think it is beyond the 5 years that probably you have thought this sediment basin has to be dredged. I mean, we gotta consider now that we have an added expense, which comes to me as no surprise, and it shouldn't be any surprise to you folks that this dredging, which is gonna happen, and I had heard next year, that we gotta kind of plan for this extra dredging in your budget, because it's something maybe that doesn't necessarily get dredged every 5 years as the north end of the sediment basin. This just happened to fill up much sooner than planned again, and that's kind of why I'm here, that even though the sediment basins are my interest, I am probably the most direct recipient of seeing what has to be done there, because I live in the area there, and over the 40 years, I have seen a lot of activity right around that railroad bridge. There's been several cars that drove off of Mississippi Street, which is a dead-end street, and went right into the creek. And you couldn't see the car because the depth of the creek by the railroad bridge and Ramsey County Bridge was always 10 feet deep, you know, and as it goes to the lake, you know, it gets, you know, much less deep again. So my point is here, I'd like to be in the loop, since I'm a direct participant here in the action that goes on. I've seen lots of things that relate to things happening in the creek. And as you know, on the north end now, and I haven't thoroughly checked it out, there is a carp station that and there's several of them and around Long Lake that people are saying, yes, we want to keep this lake, you know, a good lake, and try to remove some of the carp. So my action here today is to let you know the seriousness of what's going on south of the railroad bridge in terms of the creek and going into the Long Lake. And I think my next step, and I have already talked to the city of New Brighton about the situation, that the creek is full of sediment, and a lot of it has reached the north end of the lake. So I just like to maybe come by every once in a while and talk to you folks in terms of what we might have to do next year in terms of keeping the sediment from further filling up the north end of the lake. So anyway, that's my position. I am probably the only one directly alongside of the creek over there, and I've seen a lot happen over the years. So I'm going to say I invite your questions now in terms of my position and how I should get involved to oversee the action. So I close the mic.
Well, thank you for bringing this forward to us. I don't know if we have questions yet, because maybe we need to do a little research to have the staff look at everything and then come back to us as a board. And then we can bring you into the loop and have you come to a meeting and when we can discuss it. I don't know if we have any, Nick, do we have any direct information that we need to?
Well, President Preiner, board managers, I'd share with you that we are exploring the clean out of the sediment basin that you have. That basin exists for water quality purposes. It has been surveyed. It is full. So we're planning that. We've structured the size of the project based on that survey, and we're working with the adjacent landowner looking for space to dewater the sediment material, et cetera. That's probably the largest factor at this point, is an area to do the work. I don't know how much sediment is downstream, and the district wouldn't otherwise usually check that. This portion of the stream is where the velocity of the creek slows. Sediment will drop out naturally and deposit in that location. We do recognize the water trail and its use. However, we don't do maintenance in regards to that. We leave that to the Anoke County and Ramsey County, I think, have a joint situation on that. There was a past study of sedimentation in that area. I think that led to our Middle Rice Creek meanders to reduce sedimentation. But again, all these are about water quality efforts by the district, not navigation. And you've adopted your natural channel policy that guides staff. That's specific to issues that would cause prolonged and significant flooding is when we would take action, as well as items that would cause erosion or sedimentation to be transported. So that's what I can offer at this point. Otherwise, the development of the project is still underway.
It was brought up that possible dredging this next year. Is that on our calendar, or has that been discussed as far as timing?
Correct. That's our rough framework. Again, we're working with that neighboring landowner to find a place where we can slurry the sediment up, do a hydraulic dredge, and have the water fall out and clean it out. That's looking to be pretty expensive, and of course the board will determine if the water quality benefit balances with that potential cost. Again, it's not our avenue, although I note that in this area we've had a great deal of history on dredging the lagoon in the area of these homes, and there's quite a bit of history there. But the district at this point has no intent to dredge the creek itself, except I'm talking about our water quality sediment basin.
Where are we in terms of dredging the lake that's south of there, or downstream from there? You've got the pond. I remember a discussion on the pond.
Sediment basin,
And
yes,
it also that runs into what, Long Lake, is it?
correct.
And do we have any plans to dredge the north end of Long Lake?
No.
And Madam Chair, I think what, if I'm correct, Mr. Schilling, what you are asking is that you be informed and engaged in the discussion about what happens. And
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
procedure is adjacent landowners on any project get information about what's happening, and will there be a public hearing on this one also?
I would defer that to maybe Kyle Axtell. I see he's online, and he would know more of the positioning. I'm not certain if we need a public hearing on that or not. What I would say is we would look for folks to be attentive to the district schedule. We have an email automated system, but outside of that, we can certainly contact the individual as these things come on before the board.
Mr. Schilling, do you have an email that we can contact you when we meet?
Yes, that's what I was going to offer.
Okay,
With my email, just to kind of keep you in the loop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we will do that.
Because I think there's something in the plan what's happening next year. I don't know how much of the dredging is going to take place. But it's costly. There's always maybe changes in the budget if we're going to do it. I know you will, because the sediment basin is like a swamp. So anyway, who do I?
You can speak with Teresa on the email.
Email address here just to kind of keep me.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I have no more. Thank you for allowing me to share you.
Mr. Schilling?
Mr. Schilling, you can't be heard. You have to go back to the microphone. And we'll,
The audience can only see your back. So if you can stand over there, that'd be super. And then we can all hear you. Oh, okay.
President,
Speak up.
President
Yeah, it was
Priner,
hard to hear.
There
if,
you go, yeah.
We
just-
need the microphone up
Yeah.
a little stronger.
There you
With
go.
the mask and everything, it's
Yeah,
kind of damn.
Exactly. Yeah.
President
Okay.
Priner, if,
I know I'm only allowed 3 minutes, and I probably went 10.
that's fine.
I think you should hear from Kyle Axtell on a little bit of detail here before we finish.
Okay. Kyle, go ahead and address this issue, please.
Yeah, Madam President, members of the board, Roger, thanks for coming as well. Reiterate what Nick mentioned earlier, currently there hasn't been a plan to look at dredging the channel. If that's something the board wishes to consider, we would certainly need to engage our engineer for additional survey work down there. I will also note that the district currently has a permit with the DNR, which allows us to dredge the sediment basin only. So any additional work that would be proposed, just from a procedural standpoint, downstream of the bridge, would require new permitting application to DNR. I can't say one way or the other where they would stand on, in portions of the creek or the lake itself. And for me, that's uncharted territory. So, not to say it wouldn't be allowable. If there is, there would be a substantial amount of additional work required down there, which, as you might be aware, has not been contemplated in your budget for either the rest of this year or next year. That's just to think about as we move forward with the project.
Okay, great. We got your information, and we will keep in touch with you then.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Have a good day. Okay, go ahead.
President Priner, next item on the agenda, under items requiring board action is the Water Quality Grant Program application, A21-02, City of Fridley, and there are 6 curb cut rain gardens. Lauren's with us today to present that to you. You'll recall we did have some discussions about this at a workshop earlier. I see Rachel Orkin is with us as well from the City of Fridley. I think the last time we chatted about this, it was about concrete prices and timing of the project, so I leave it to Lauren.
Lauren, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Nick. Thank you, board. Good morning, President Priner, Board of Managers. As Nick said, today for your consideration is the Water Quality Grant Program application. It starts on page 72 in your packets for the 6 curb cut rain gardens in conjunction with the City of Fridley's 2021 street reconstruction project. Let's see here. I'm presenting this project as a separate action item because it differs a little bit from typical projects in the proposed grant award recommendation. And I'll transition here to sharing my slides. Oh, host disabled participant screen sharing. Oh, there we go. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Please let me know if you can't see these slides here.
We can see
We
it.
can see it, yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so as Nick said, we briefly discussed this project with the board at the August workshop earlier this year, when staff and the city previously expected that concrete work would occur prior to today's consideration of the application. The concrete work has since been, the schedule for that has since been revised due to some of the other street reconstruction work. And the city is not required to treat stormwater with its street reconstruction projects. So all the proposed curb cut rain gardens on this slide here are voluntary. I always like to look at historical photos of a project area to see what it looked like in the past. Here's a photo from May 10th, 1960. And here you can see that most of the development in the proposed rain garden area was complete by 1960. and prior to the district's establishment and before stormwater treatment requirements were in place. The proposed project process for this project is similar to the City of White Bear Lake curb cut rain garden projects in that the district would enter into a grant agreement with the city for the low bid amount, and the city would enter into an agreement with the chosen contractor rather than each of the 6 landowners entering into separate contracts. One difference in the process is the city is able to provide the full project match for the project, so the landowners would only be responsible for the maintenance of the rain gardens and the associated costs of the maintenance. The district would also enter into a 10-year operation and maintenance agreement with each of the 6 landowners. The Anoka Conservation District prepared a bid package for the project, and the city received 4 bids, with the lowest bid from Sandstrom Land Management. The project was also considered by the CAC at last week's meeting, and the CAC supported the project in staff's proposed grant amount of $7,500 per rain garden, which is $45,000. This is also consistent with the discussion from the August board workshop. A few of the project highlights are the project is a partnership with the Anoka Conservation District and the City of Fridley, and kicks off the implementation of the recently completed Lower Rice Creek Stormwater Retrofit Analysis Report, as these 6 rain gardens were identified in that report. These 6 rain gardens would also provide or capture runoff from a 5-acre drainage area, which will result in an annual reduction of 60,839 cubic feet of volume, 604 pounds of total suspended solids, and almost 2 pounds of total phosphorus. And here's a proposed motion, which is also in your packets at the bottom of page 73. I and Rachel, working with the City of Fridley, are available for any questions today.
Any questions on this project?
Madam President, first of all, I am sure Dave with the Citizens Advisory Committee ran those numbers and was thrilled at the response of total phosphorus reduction, et cetera. So that's a good thing. I see that the operation and maintenance agreement is with the Rice Creek Watershed as opposed to the city. Okay. What is the intention of how we look at all these rain gardens with those maintenance agreements?
Yes, President Preiner, Manager Wynand, part of the water quality grant application is it's a requirement for every water quality grant program application to have a maintenance agreement to ensure their continued function, to ensure a project's continued function into the future. And for this project, the landowners would be responsible for maintenance since the project is going through the program, and we want to make sure that those rain gardens will continue to function in the future. And we would also revise that operation and maintenance agreement to include some new language about the city owning the right-of-way, which we did for the City of White Bear Lake curb cut rain garden projects as well, to make sure that it's reflective of the current process and how we would go about the project.
So is the O&M agreement connected to the property transfer? Should someone move?
No, it is not.
Okay.
It's not a recorded maintenance agreement. It's for 10 years, and we would ask any landowner who is moving to let us know or the city know that they're moving so that we can educate the new landowners about the project.
All right. And congratulations to the city for their partnership in this. I'd like to see the same thing happen in Moundsview.
Okay. Mike?
So, Madam President, I was the liaison from the board at the CAC meeting where this was discussed. The CAC have in the past did an excellent job of inquiry, thoughtful consideration. For example, they do as I often do. They noted that the winning bid was half the cost of the highest bid and inquired, how can that happen? And we see that frequently, of course. And the staff's analysis was that, first of all, we've used the successful bidder on a few other projects. We've had good success with them. They have a good track record, so we trust them. And that some people want the job and some people go, if I get lucky and I'll take it if I
They
get a
threw
lot
a
of money
number
for
at
it.
it,
So-
yeah.
So that was the explanation for the $62,582 bid. And other similar inquiries were properly answered.
All right, now we need a motion.
Since I was there, I will move to approve the water quality grant contract A 21-02 of $45,000, not to exceed 75% of eligible project expenses, in accordance with the Rice Creek Watershed District staff's recommendation and establish program guidelines.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Nice to see Fridley getting involved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, Lauren.
Madam President, members of the board, if I just could say really quickly that we appreciate your support for this project. It's very difficult for us to get stormwater treatment in residential neighborhoods like this. And as the board recently approved the 2021 Lower Rice Creek SRA, it's not often that we have an opportunity in which a plan is prepared and we can so quickly transition into implementation. So we're really excited about this. This wouldn't have been possible without the technical assistance provided by Rice Creek Watershed District and Anoka Conservation District in the selection of these rain garden locations and development of the plans. So we're really excited about this partnership and hope to continue doing things like this in other road project areas in Rice Creek in the future.
Thank you, Rachel. We appreciate that, and we do intend to do more projects, so, thank you.
So
Thank
good
you.
to see the staff.
Thank you.
Good to see the staff has used such quick action on the Anoka County Soil and Conservation District projects that they had proposed, Didn't stay on the shelf very long, did it, Lauren?
It's not.
Okay, Nick? Mod resolutions.
Yes, President Priner, Board of Managers, next item is your 2021 consideration of the mod resolutions. We did discuss this at the workshop. We have a number of votes here. Doesn't appear that Beth is with us, but we can get through this. First and foremost, I think maybe the delegation of the action on the delegates would be appropriate. My understanding it was Manager Bradley, Manager Weinant, and Manager Wagaman was an alternative. If someone would consider that motion.
Okay, somebody make the
Madam
motion.
President, I'll move that Managers Bradley be designated and Manager Wynant be designated the...
They can't hear.
Oh, I'm sorry, Teresa. I'm sorry. I move that Manager Bradley and Manager Wynant be designated as our delegates to the 2021 mod convention and that Manager Wagaman be the alternate.
I'll second that. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
So, Nick, do you people take responsibility for getting us registered as your delegates, or do we take action? Okay, thank you. That's the way I like it.
Yep.
President Priner, the next item will be consideration of the resolutions and the materials on the business meeting that the delegates and/or the alternate will be voting at. And so you have a slate of, is it not 7? Yep. 7 resolutions. The discussion was that you were consistent with the committee recommendations there. I'll also note that the mod budget is likely an agenda item, as well as their bylaw proposed changes, both of which you reviewed at the workshop. With that, certainly look for a motion there.
Madam Chair, I move that we instruct the delegates to vote in accordance with the stated Rice Creek Watershed District positions related to the 7 resolutions, the budget and the bylaws on the agenda at the 2021 MOD business meeting.
And Madam President, I'll second that, but I'll also point out that we, as a group, decided to vote in favor of all the resolutions. We supported them also.
Yep.
Correct.
Thank you for that clarification.
And we supported the budget. Lord help us. And we supported the bylaw change.
I would note the budget's lower this year than last year.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Annette?
Yes, next item, manager, is the resolution authorizing treasurer approval. This being November, as usual, we have only one board meeting, so we have to keep the lights on and business moving. On page 157 of your packet, you'll see the authorization, a resolution authorizing for payment of November 2021 check register.
And Madam President, I'll move Resolution 2021-24, Rice Creek Watershed District Board of Managers authorization for payment of the November 2021 check register. And therefore be it resolved that the Board of Managers authorizes the district treasurer to review and approve payment of the November 24th, 2021 check register in an amount not to exceed $400,000 for operating expenses and $150,000 for surety returns.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second.
Madam President, I'll note that we do this every year, and that we'll be doing it next month also.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And it'll be roll call. Waller?
Yes.
Wynant?
Yes.
Bradley?
Yes.
Wageman?
Yes.
Kreiner, yes. Motion passes. Okay. And now we're going to number 4. I think that was added on. Nick?
Correct. President Preiner, Board of Managers, next is the Preview Lake Outlet Project. We did have some new materials provided to the managers via email and hard copy this morning. Those materials were posted on the Rice Creek website and announced via the district's automated system, and they are here and available today as well. We had good workshop discussion on the engineers' memoranda for Preview Lake Outlet Project that consisted of 3 memos. The first was the outlet condition at Halls Marsh, and no evidence of significant sedimentation observed there. The second was the response, technical response to Bud and Ruth Jensen's letter to the DNR. There was a date and minor comma adjustment on that one. And as requested by DNR for our permit application, the district needed to respond to these matters. And the third memo was a response to Birchwood Village Resolution 21-24. There we had date adjustment, as well as the board had some text adjustments from their discussion at the workshop. Those are before you again. Again, here we see this in support of the district application effort for the DNR and the outlet structure replacement. The workshop also discussed a cover letter that Kyle had proposed some bullet points for on those to cover the technical memos in a response to the Jensens in the city of Birchwood. Those draft letters are concluded in your materials. As an introduction to the tech memo, to note that there's no change in the hydrology and hydrologic function of the system in this replacement. It's an opportunity to continue the discussion with the cities on the broader PLOP system when it's anchored in documented, data-driven, scientifically founded actions, as Kyle so appropriately noted. Kyle's on screen there. I know Chris is here with us. John Kolb is also online if you had that. And there is a motion on page 2 of that additional packet. And we should look at moving those items. All of us are available for any questions or adjustments you'd like to see.
Okay, any questions on this? For Kyle or John Cole?
So
Chris?
before we do that,
Mhm.
I think we should discuss the overnight submission by Ernest W. Budd and Ruth W. Jensen.
That was our next
I
agenda.
know, but it seems to me
You want to
that-
go with this first?
Seems to me that impacts
What we do
what
here?
we're doing here.
Yep, I agree.
So I haven't had a chance, obviously, it's
I've been able to read it.
No.
No.
9 pages long, haven't had a chance to read it. Little bit I skimmed on it, it's the Jensens stating their position. I do not believe, as a person who used to make a living dealing with this kind of thing, that we have an obligation to always respond to every single principal point. That I do not believe based on my prior experience, that we have an obligation to respond to each and every submission and position. I do think we have an obligation to read it and to understand it. And nothing I have been able to quickly glean through here would affect my view of what we're doing and how we're going about this thing. So I think either we approve the motion as proposed, or we put it off to our next meeting. I don't know what I think our timelines are that we want to get this done. So I would therefore think that we should table any consideration of this latest submission until our next meeting. Give us an opportunity to look at it.
Yep.
But that we proceed apace based on what we need to get done for the public interest.
Thank you.
Fair enough.
Okay, so let's get the procedure right. The president had put the letters as an item separately. Then you're combining the two of them together again. And
Yeah.
then you're saying, we're going to uncombine them and we're going to go back to it being number 5 and we'll table that to the next
So
meeting.
if you want, we could have reversed the order. We could start off
But
by.
I just want to make sure I
Yeah,
have the
that-
letter.
that-
So let's go back and do this, Pat, with the letters, and then we'll do number
Yeah, but
5.
I didn't want us to approve these and then come to the,
And then have that
and
discussion.
then come back and say, whoops, I guess we shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Well,
And these weren't put in any particular order, we were just adding them into the discussion, so,
yeah.
Yes.
go ahead.
President Preiner, thanks for that. Board of Managers, I would say yes, we received this email first thing this morning. I happened to stop by the office and saw it, so printed it and handed it out, and I think a few of you might have seen it in your own email. And I'll note it had a specific request to get it to Manager Waller, so that, I'd like the record to reflect that that was completed.
Thank you very much for that extra effort of stopping by the office this morning. That's fine. So,
To go a little bit further, it is a, 9-page letter raising some issues. The district has a permit with the DNR for this facility. I think it would be something for the board to consider if it would like to defer to the DNR and its authority of our permit. We can disclose this to them to see if it has relevance in us undertaking this project. I'll note that in doing so, we're being transparent with the concerns that are on the landscape. And I'll further note that the letters that Kyle drafted include engaging with the cities to talk about water quality or those data-driven concerns that landowners or the cities should have. I think it's best that we engage at the city level with that. That's not unusual. You just saw Fridley on screen with us. Staff is very capable of executing that.
Madam Chair, I would like to ask Manager Bradley if the edits reflect what you had suggested.
Our excellent staff accomplished what I was hoping they would do.
Great. So I would second the motion if you want to make it.
So I would move to adopt the HEI technical memoranda dated 11-3-2021 regarding Preby Lake Outfall Project Outlet Condition 11-9-2021 regarding Jensen letter and 11-9-2021 regarding Birchwood Village Resolution 2021-24 to direct transmittal of a memoranda to the concerned parties using the cover letters drafted by staff and authorizes the board president to sign letters, period.
And we have a
And
second.
I would second.
So, Madam President, so I just understand here that we've had two Jensen letters we're talking about here. Is there a differentiation by date as to which ones we are? Because the Jensen letter that we discussed in the Monday's meeting was an earlier date than today's, or yesterday, this one on the November the 10th. So we're just talking about,
Because this was written.
this says a letter.
President Preiner, I think your district engineer has made that distinction within his memo identifying the letter by
okay.
date to which he's responding.
Just want to make sure we're keeping our letters straight here.
Very good
Good
point.
observation.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion second, further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
And then on the other one, because we reversed order, do we need any kind of motion to table this or bring it forward?
Yes,
or-
we probably need a
Yeah.
motion to table. I move that we table the I move that we table any discussion on the November 10th, 2021 letter from the Jensens
Until,
until further
or until the next meeting?
Until it's brought back to us.
until it's brought back to us.
Well,
I don't know.
I'd like
I
to,
think,
I'd like to have it.
I can ask Lewis, I think we have to have a date. certain
Yeah,
to
let's have a
table.
date certain, otherwise it leaves it open, you never get it done.
President Preiner, as you wish, I'll just note John Kolb was working with you
Oh,
on this.
okay.
That's no disrespect, obviously, to Lewis.
Sorry,
and
Lewis, go away. I
I'm
want to
sure
talk to
they
John.
would have a similar response.
There he is. Hi, John. Could you,
I'm sure Lewis is happy not to be involved in this.
I agree, you should set a date to action this rather than leaving it open. I think that's basic practice for the board as well.
okay.
And we've already looked at some of the issues raised in the most recent letter, especially as it goes to the acquisition of flooding or ponding easements and the payment of those damages back at the original establishment of the project. So
Can we go as far out as our December? regular meeting?
That's really good.
President Preiner, I think that date would be fine. I guess
Staff has to-
the direction to staff that I think would be important, if you're supportive of my suggestion, would be for staff to transmit the additional letter to the DNR and ask response that they've received it, and that as our permit comes before them, our application, they'll tell us if any of this raises concerns. And we can come back in the December meeting and let you know that we've completed that or how that little bit of process went.
That's good.
So do we need a date?
Next
The
meeting.
December,
The December,
the December
first
8th
regular
meeting?
meeting in December.
December 8th?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd include that in my motion.
I'll second that, and to table to the next business meeting, the December
Regular.
meeting.
Is the 8th.
Yeah, regular meeting in December 8th, and that's the evening meeting at 7 o'clock, isn't it? Just so that I don't forget again, it's nighttime.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's 4 and 5. We go to 6, check register.
Okay. Madam
Thank you,
President, I
John.
move to approve the check register dated November 10th, 2021, in the amount of $126,682.06, prepared by Red Path and Company.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
District engineer update and timeline. Anything particular for Chris? Chris, any comments?
Madam President, I'll note a couple different things. One is that the MS Forefront application for Watershed District has been now successfully implemented for handling your permitting program. So we've had training with the district staff and Houston staff on utilizing it, and now we're implementing it. So we're off to a new chapter there with that. Other thing I'll note is that the district did get concurrence from Coon Creek Watershed District for the boundary change. And so that'll be something that we'll be coming back to, I believe, at the next board meeting with a petition for boundary change.
Do you want to notice, for just for the record, that the pipeline company has responded?
Nick can comment on that.
Yeah, President Priner, Board of Managers, good point. I'll note that both the pipeline companies, that would be Magellan, and the other one is Colk. Flint Hills, I believe they're one and the same, have both responded to your communications now. Seems as though their staff is assessing these locations, or at least engaging us, so that's good news. I don't know if Chris had something else to add to that.
Anything else?
I
Okay.
don't have anything else to add. No.
Any questions for Chris? Otherwise, we go to the calendar. We have our calendar at 164 for December. Everybody is aware of the dates and times.
We have a November 30th special hearing meeting.
There is none.
Yes,
Yeah.
we do.
We have that, we decided that the other day,
Yes,
6 PM.
President Priner, Board Manager is correct on November 30th. That is your informational meeting. That is on RCD 8. So we'll be engaging the DNR and the county.
And it will be here at Shoreview.
Yep.
Correct.
All right.
And then, of course, the virtual mod meeting
Yep.
on the first, second, and third for added excitement and life.
Okay, everybody's good with the calendar? Administrator updates, I'm sorry. Nick?
Yes, Board of Managers, I'll note that I did offer the position of technical field assistant to Katie Hembray, and she did accept that offer. We'll look for her to start November 30th.
I'm sorry, say that name again?
Katie Hembray, Hembre.
H-A-M-D.
Hembre.
Okay.
And the first name?
Katie.
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 And would you just kind of give us a job description overview just of what that will be?
Yes, this is a field, technical field assistant is the title. The work that's envisioned is to go out to our facilities, routine inspection, bring that information back, populate our MS4 database, trying to advance that into routine, a place to, a receptacle for all the information that we have about the easements, challenges, work that needs to be done to repair them, et cetera. Other work will be on public drainage, going out and discussing with landowners, maybe first look for, hey, I've got high water, is something blocking the system, these types of things. So.
And a little bit about the experience coming in?
Ooh, the experience, graduate of the University of Minnesota, and they had some work in water policy. Let's see, some internship type work associated with their degree, but otherwise coming on board fresh for the district. I'll note that this person was vetted and ranked accordingly through the interview process and was successful. So
And did we have a lot of applications? Or?
he had a total of, I think there were 10, I'll say. We interviewed 5, if not 6, and while I'm a little fuzzy on it, that was quite some time ago. Yeah, and we put that on hold, so.
Okay.
But I reached out to Katie recently after I introduced the matter to you again, and she would prefer to work with Rice Creek and making arrangements to do so.
Fabulous.
Very good.
Very good.
I'll just note one other thing. So I'll just simply respond to the Jensen email, let them know that we received it, it's been distributed, and the board, as you directed, so, yeah.
Okay. Very good, thank you, Nick. Manager's update, Manager Waller.
Well, let's see, I went to the Washington County Consortium meeting, a virtual presentation of the Lower St. Croix 1 Watershed 1 plan. which is basically administered by the Washington County Soil and Water Conservation District. And, it's kind of interesting because I think I attended the first couple of meetings of that when it started some years ago, and they're moving right along. Remember, they don't do the Wisconsin side of the St. Croix, and they don't do the Snake River, and they don't do the Kettle Rivers. So it's maybe 1/3 of the drainage here, basically we're talking about. Okay, so I visited with the city council in Hugo, as I did in Forest Lake, to listen to what they're doing and what's going on, and of course they're building like mad in Hugo. And they, as Nick had said earlier, he's had a meeting with the administrator and the planner there, and Nick seemed to think things are going along all right. I understand that they're working on some things that have been learned through the COVID situation and with the building, and trying working forward to maybe adjust how things, the rules are such. And then I had a telephone call yesterday, I think it was, it was yesterday. I was at the University of Minnesota Ag Soil Department, and I got a call about tiles. Appropriate, I guess. City councilman telephoned me from Grant about we talked about that tile out at Brown's, and at the moment it appears that the county is talking about plugging their side of it, so then Mr. Brown would not have, I haven't spoke to Mr. Brown yet, but if that happens, he wouldn't have the water flowing through there. And Tom Schmidt's done some investigation to it. That particular property is not within the boundary of the benefited area, and although there's ditches there. I still don't know what a trickle map is, but I'm going to hopefully sometime before the next meeting sit down with Tom and with Nick, and we'll talk about this, because there's a couple different things that are involved here. I understand, I just, it's kind of a research curiosity to me, to see what, because we get into these things all too often. We had a presentation today from one of the citizens that was involved in it. We've had an email about, they aren't identical situations, but somewhat similar. And then finally, of course, today is Marine Corps birthday, which I'm sure all of you want to celebrate.
Happy birthday.
And tomorrow is Veterans Day. And so, of course, I wish all the active duty members of the armed forces and their families a very happy and safe day tomorrow. And remind everyone that all the former members of the armed forces also, and their families, and the general population, because people often forget that here at home it takes a strong front, both in industry, in order to maintain the armed forces in the field where the live action might be, and to remember, of course, all of your relatives, those that are not only in the United States but in Canada or in Europe, for the conflicts of the last century. And other than that, I don't have anything else I think I need to chat about.
President,
Thank you, Jen. Go ahead.
for clarity in the record, John, you're referring to Brown, the landowner, not Brown's Preserve, the district facility.
I am Mr. Steve Brown, and I don't have his address in front of me. It's out off of County Road 7.
Yeah. Thanks for
so that's.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Manager Waller, for those last comments, recognizing the active duty and those veterans. And I do have a photo of the smart young airmen who keep the planes in the air, if you want to take a look at it. Those are the guys that are in my prayers, for sure. I wanted to point out, Madam Chair, the MAUD newsletter that we just recently received, and the actions of my former county board members in Renville County relating to Limbo Creek and the lawsuit that the county board has with DNR. DNR has indicated that the creek is a public waters, and the board maintains that the creek is a ditch system. So it continues to repeat itself, and apparently it looks like there's a session on this at the MAUD conference on those legal claims. So just kind of strikes at home. The other one is I continue to be amazed at the construction that is going on. And, you know, 6 months ago, they were permit requests, and now there are these huge concrete edifices along 694 and 35W.
Concrete's good.
Which, yeah, I mean, they're just big.
It's much better than mud.
Big, they're big. And to Nick, this also is, we permit these things and then we have to inspect these. So, you know, once again, just recognizing what the increase in staff time, workload, et cetera.
President Preiner, if I could, Manager Winan, appreciate it. We obviously have a great number of permits. I think we went over 300 in our review files recently. We may not see, you know, when they break ground and proceed with that, this could continue on for quite some time on the inspection side. The drainage conference, which precedes the MOD event or is a subset of the MOD event, I think Chris maybe had a comment or to note or recognize what you were sharing there.
Madam President, I can comment real quickly on that item you mentioned. You know, we have the MOD Range Conference on the 1st of December, and the item that Manager Wynant was referring to, they are having a short discussion on a couple of the legal matters that have occurred related to drainage systems there. I don't know how deep they'll get into that. I do know that those discussions are I should say the legal issue is still in flux yet. My understanding is that there's going to be continued litigation on that, going to appeals on that, but it's definitely something that could have wide-ranging effects, particularly with regard to part of the decision that indicated that the classification of a public water as being something definitional rather than being something that's inventoried, meaning that you could potentially have items or public waters that did not have a public hearing that are now, managed as public waters.
So, Madam President, so I would hope they'd also think about taking a look at those they had a hearing and that maybe aren't public waters. Such as Privy Lake, which is a stormwater pond. It's now public water. That's a big problem. I have, Madam President, a question for Mr. Colby. It just occurred to me, Chris, you promoted it in my mind. So, John, this phrase trickle map was given to me a couple of weeks back, and you weren't here. So, Lewis had never heard of one. Chris hasn't. Have you ever heard of a Minnesota Highway Department trickle map?
I have not.
Okay. Well, I certainly want to find out what it is because it's a curious thing in this situation. This particular tile that we're talking about is the district would look at it as a private tile right at the moment, but I observed 3 inches of water going through it in this drought. And the owner tells me that it has 18 inches. This has nothing to see it gushing through there in a torrent. So, but thank you for your time there, Madam President.
President Preiner, Board of Managers, appreciate your endurance here. I think it's just important for me to note to you that the district's public drainage systems are, some new ditch systems have been added to the impaired waters list by PCA. Of course, we see them as ditches. They see them as impaired waters. We recognize a conflict when we apply for our MS4 permit. When we report on our MS4 permit, we continually assert this is problematic and doesn't make sense to the district, and we look for them to correct it. We have yet to receive we've had good engagement with staff at PCA, but we've yet to have a reconciled position, I'll say, or the clarity that we're looking for, so.
Madam President, just to add to the administrator's comments, the PCA can take a drainage system that is built in a swamp, and so the water that comes through that, it goes through the organic materials and is oxygen depleted, and then it becomes impaired for lack of oxygen and biodi, and that's a natural occurring effect. But then it throws you into a whole bunch of different rules and that. So I agree with the administrator. There needs to be some kind of clarity or re-examination or whatever we need to do on a lot of these things that were done 30 years ago.
Okay, Manager Bradley, updates.
Just, I've already stated that I attended the CAC meeting. They did an excellent job of evaluating the project we just approved and provided a grant to the city of Fridley. That's it.
Okay. Manager Wageman.
I do have a couple things. I did get a couple calls about the temporary weir that's in the ditch on 10/22/32, and I did talk to, I believe, Nick about it, Administrator Nick Tomzak, and I just reported back to them that it's in the works and that it will be coming out. And then also yesterday had a quarterly treasury meeting with Nick and Teresa, and the only thing to report out of that is that they are extremely on top of everything, and everything is right where it should be. So, no surprises whatsoever.
Okay.
That's it for me.
And I have nothing new, just to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
It'll be another week, we won't see each other again, so with that, I can have a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn, Madam President.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It was 1 year ago today that my brother-in-law passed away from COVID. Tomorrow, the 11th.
1 year.
It was 11/11,
Man,
yeah,
how can that
on Veterans Day, yep.
Bye, Lauren. Bye, John.